these young people amazing? I can tell you that the quality of their presentations doesn't make the old guy the least bit nervous. Maybe feeling like watching a video about being trapped underwater in a cave. Since nearly the inception of mass education systems, there has been a conflict between two competing ideas about how we should structure, organize, and even improve learning. On the one hand, we have a set of design principles influenced by this man, Frederick Winslow Taylor. Taylor was a Pennsylvanian and a mechanical engineer who spent his life studying production, assembly lines, factories, how to make them more efficient, measuring every move within them, and how to make production happen faster. Taylor believed that there was one right and best way to do just about anything, and that the work that we should undertake was in finding that one right and best way and then replicating it to make things more efficient and faster. Taylor put his ideas down in an influential book in 1911 called The Principles of Scientific Management, and had incredible appeal and widespread use around the world in different industries and sectors. The principles of scientific management became so widespread and Taylor's ideas became so widespread that they actually came to bear his name, Taylorism. Some of the factory model and factory principles that Taylor talked about were also applied to education. When we think about how we've structured education, where we take knowledge and we carve it into different subjects, reading, writing, math, the sciences, and we take students and we carve them into manageable batches based on the year of their birth. First, second, third grade, and through the system they move. We have replicated the factory model when it comes to education. The factory model's goal is to create a workforce, create students who are prepared for a factory-based workforce. And the role of the teacher in this model is to stand in front of the room and be a source of knowledge, be a purveyor of information to students. But the factory model wasn't the only theory or approach to education that was out there. Around the same time that Frederick Taylor was writing, and a little bit after, a North American writer, thinker, philosopher named John Dewey was also putting down his ideas about education. And Dewey was an academic. He worked in prestigious universities like the University of Michigan, Chicago, and Columbia. And his ideas contributed to a philosophy of education called Constructivism. The big idea behind Constructivism is that students use their own background experiences to build new learning. And the work of education really is expanding those experiences, and that learning happens by doing. Learning happens by experiencing things firsthand. And that learning was also a very social process. That we learn best when we learn together, and those experiences build off of each other and build up into something new. The school in Constructivism wasn't the factory. The school in Constructivism was the community. Learning happened within the community, and the school was surrounded by and supported by the community. And that students should be engaged in projects and problems and interesting experiences that were relevant to the community and relevant to the student. The teacher in the constructivist approach isn't a sage on the stage standing in front of the room, but the teacher is actually part of the learning experience, acting as a facilitator or a guide to learning for the students. And you can see this teacher from our community and the projects that the students are engaged in. They're deeply engaged in those, but you can barely see the teacher in the room, but he's right there, facilitating learning. So, whose ideas prevailed? Well, we could probably validate it with the experiences of most of the people in this room. But Taylor's ideas and the factory model have dominated how we have structured education. This has become particularly intense in the last 20 years or so, as we've doubled down on the factory model by increasing the standardization of education and thinking about how we can assess knowledge through standardized tests. And we take that information and we rank schools and students and teachers on complex data dashboards and scorecards. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the factory model and Taylorism have tremendous positives. They certainly have. Things like increased production, increased efficiency, better performance metrics, Even the assessments that students are taking have a value and a purpose. They're important and they're meaningful. What I am saying is that there is a cost that we've paid with hyper-focusing on standardization and measurement in an educational context. And that cost has come with disengaging millions upon millions of people who have talents, abilities, passions, dreams that are not easily measured on a standardized test. When we look at the results of the United States in comparison with other countries, since the aggressive implementation of this further standardization and hyper-focus on measurement of education, with No Child Left Behind and later its successor, the Every Student Succeeds Act, we see that the results of the United States are actually worse than they were before this agenda took hold. This tells us that the factory model of education is failing by its own measures of success. Now, I don't want you to despair or lose hope. We have reason to be optimistic, to be excited about, to be hopeful about our children's future and the future of education. Here within this community, and in communities like ours all over the world, students, teachers, parents, community leaders, school leaders are working to transform the educational experience into something meaningful, genuine, authentic, passion-driven for students. They're resisting efforts to further standardize education. Students like these, who are collecting water samples in our community, forming hypotheses and coming up with an action plan, or students like these who designed, built, and operated a solar-powered vehicle that actually won a state award. All across our community, and in communities like ours all across the world, there are students learning in innovative new ways. This is happening right before our eyes. We're giving students a chance to practice things like collaboration, creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, things that are not easily measured on a standardized test or easily answered by Google. So I urge you to get out into your neighborhood schools and see this revolution happening and support the people that are doing it. The reforms and the revolution in education that we need is not coming to us from a white paper, from some think tank. It's not being delivered to us from the legislative state house floor. And it's certainly not coming to us from some billionaire's bank account. The transformation, the revolution in education that we need is happening in our communities every day. So make that phone call, send that email, show up, engage, and support the people that are bringing us the revolution in education we need. Thank you.